Welcome back, everybody. Just got back from another short work trip and have made more progress on the fuel tanks. Went ahead and started fabricating the forward attach brackets. I believe these are going to attach to the fuselage at some point later on, and they go on the inboard leading edge of the fuel tank. So you start with that really thick piece of angle, and from that you have to make some interesting curved shapes. Definitely at the point in the plans where they don't spoon feed you anymore. They just tell you to make a part, and you just got to sit there and look at the plans themselves and scratch your head a lot and try and figure out how you intend to do this. It gets even worse with another part here later on, and if you stick around to the end, you'll see a part that I completely messed up. I had 2 attempts at it, and yeah, messed it up. Had to order some new material, and I'm going to need to order a couple more tools to make this happen. But in the meantime, you see me trying to measure that thing out, and I was using that roll of pipe tape as a template to get the radius right, and finally I gave up and printed out a copy of the plans at 200% size so I could get actual size template, and now I'm using that to transfer onto my angle so I've got good cut lines. And this is just for the vertical part, so you can see I've got that cut out. Now I have to match the nose profile of the rib, which means once you're done, you will have one that is dedicated to the left and one dedicated to the right, because they are different shapes based on which side they're on. And you get the gist of it. Cut the basic shape out on the bandsaw and that power hacksaw, and then it's over to the belt sander for fine tuning to get it to sit just right up against the nose. And then once that's done, goes to the Scotch-Brite wheel to get cleaned up. So now looking at it, I realize I'm going to have interference with those two rivet holes for the skin later on. So I can make the overall part smaller. I decided to just bevel the edge, so I slowed that down for you. Should still have plenty of edge distance for the rivets that need to go in there later on. But it gives me plenty of clearance room for the skin rivets. This part gets put in after the skin gets put on, once this rib gets put in. So you just kind of slide it in, and then I'll rivet it in later. Anyhow, made the other side same as the first side. Laid out my rivet pattern. Doesn't tell you exactly where, but you use standard edge distance and shows you the quantity of rivets. Just space them out. Right side's not a big deal. Left side, if you look closely, you can see a circle drawn in the middle. That is a 9/16 circle that's going to be for a hole I have to drill later on, because that tank is getting a flop tube, and that gets mounted through that bracket. There you can see the circle. I should have plenty of edge clearance. If I don't, I can always change some of those rivets out to flush rivets and cover the top of them. So now I need to get the doubler plates out. They are nested inside of those trim rings, or those doubler rings for the access panels. And you saw me there with a really big hole saw. That is a 5 1/4 inch hole saw. I opted to go that route instead of the fly cutter, because fly cutters, I've used them in the past, they scare the crap out of me. Spoiler alert, the hole saw is not a whole lot better, but I figured this was so thin, if I clamped it down really well, it should be okay. So now I'm just getting that thing lined up on the rib where it goes, the doubler plate behind it, and then I'm using the holes I drilled earlier as a guide to drill all the way through into the doubler plate. And once I do that, these parts are now married together, so I got to make sure I keep them marked so they go back to the correct side. Otherwise they just won't line up right later on. That doubler on the backside serves a couple purposes. I mean, it acts as a doubler plate for this big attach bracket, but it also goes right up against the edge of the skin, and it helps you create a better seal with the tank sealant you got to put on later, so you don't have to deal with those notches that are in the end of the rib. Yeah, now I'm trying to clean the little nubs off of the rings there, and I'm using my Scotch-Brite wheel, and I'm wearing quite the groove in it. I completely forgot that I have a sanding drum for the drill press, which I will remember later, and it ends up doing a really good job of cleaning up the holes. So now I'm trying to figure out the orientation and get these things laid out in the exact right spot to cut these big holes. And what it really comes down to is you're basically just going to cut out right around the impression there for that rib, and you really want to make sure that you get it all cut out, because if any of that is sticking up, you're not going to get a good seal later on. So I've marked it just to give myself a guide, and now I'm trying to find the exact center of that. So I'm taking two exact lines, making sure that they are squared up, and then drawing a diagonal between those. Gives me the center, and I'm just verifying it with the calipers to make sure I've got center figured out. Some public mouth on the phone. Alright, so I'm happy that I've got it centered, figured out. Now I just drill a pilot hole in the middle, open it up a little bit with the unibit there to make sure that the pilot bit in the center of this thing will fit, and I'm getting the drill press all lined up. Don't worry, you're going to get a better shot. Here's the action cam going real slow. I do have some cutting lube on there too. Now it looks like it moves, but it's actually the entire drill press that is sliding over. So didn't go too badly. It grabbed a little bit, did a pretty decent job. And again, I'm using the Scotch-Brite wheel because I've completely forgotten I have a sanding drum for the drill press, but I'll remember it here shortly. So now I'm checking the actual fit, which the hole I cut is a little smaller than the opening of that doubler, so I've got a little room to work with there. So now they want you to use that doubler to drill holes through the rib so that you can mount everything, but that doesn't make any sense to me, because what I really need is that piece there to be oriented correctly. If you notice, it's got a flat spot on the front, so it needs to be in a certain location. So I'm using that, getting it lined up where I wanted. I used the doubler ring to make sure it was centered on the hole first. That's why I made those marks on there. And now I'm going through and drilling my holes through the rib with that as the guide. And I'm only doing this on the right rib right now, because I'm putting a flop tube for potential inverted flight in my left tank, and that's a whole different process. So instead of using this plate, I've got a blank plate on order from Vans, and it should be the exact same hole layout, but I don't want to use that other plate and then find out it's wrong. So I'm just going to wait until that new blank plate shows up, and I'll use it to do the exact same process on the left side. So I got all of those holes drilled, and I'm getting out the brackets that you need to hold the pickup tube in place, and the wife has come out to bring me my Father's Day gift a day early. I'm explaining to her how the flop tube works, and now I'm taking a break to build my Father's Day gift. One thing you can never have too much of is storage, and this one has a built-in power strip. But it is a lot bigger than I thought it was, so now I got to figure out where to put it. decide best place is above the reference table that I've got set up over there, which means the scrappy flag's got to move. While you watch me hang this thing up, in other news, I have ordered a few more parts. Some I'll talk about in a little bit when you see what I messed up. I did decide, after watching the van's fuel tank video a couple of more times, I did order a used Semco sealant gun off of eBay, and I ordered a couple of tubes of sealant. I'm only really planning to use that for the rear baffle, just to make sure I get an adequate size bead. I don't feel like messing around with a cut Ziploc bag or anything else, so this just seemed like an easier way to do it, and I'll give this thing every chance in the world to hopefully not leak. I also ordered some different nut plates for those access panels. Instead of using the ones Van supplies, I saw on the forums where somebody had listed some closed-end ones, which you can see them kind of laying on the bench there. They've got a little seal around them, and they are completely encapsulated, so hopefully it's one less path for fuel to leak out. So that's what I'm going to use for those. Anyhow, since I'm using a flop tube, I'm going to have a standard tube pickup on the right side, which is what you see right here. And luckily, I've got enough of that tubing material for 2 attempts at this, because that first one I bent too long, and I'd already cut the slots in the end of it for the fuel pickup, so I couldn't reuse it. So I went ahead and grabbed the other tube. You see me there, I cut the slots in it again, because you think I would have learned not to cut those slots first. This time I get it bent exactly right, getting it marked where I need to cut it. This all has to go together as an assembly here later on, but we'll slow this down now. I've cut it, I've cleaned the end, and I have this rotary flaring tool in my work toolkit that I was thinking would be awesome for using for this. I've seen other people use them, and these are the best ones to use. I've used this before. It makes really nice flares. So I'm getting this thing all locked in and ready to flare, and I've already made horrible mistake number 1. Actually, I've made mistake 1 and 2, and I just don't realize it yet. Some of you might have figured it out, especially if you're looking at what's laying on my bench. Pro tip, make a little mark on the back side of your tube. That way, if you don't have it clamped tight enough, you'll notice it sliding out. That's what I'm doing right there. It was going really easy, so I thought maybe it was sliding, but it's not. It's doing a really good job and making a really nice flare. And right there, I just realized mistake 1. Can't undo it, so, and I don't have enough tubing left to cut this shorter and redo this flare, so I'm going to take it out of the tool. And before you make a flared end, you should always put the nut and the collar on the tube, because once it's flared, you have no way to put those parts on. And since the other end of my tube is already crimped down and has those notches cut in it, I can't just slide them on the other way. So right now I'm thinking that's my big problem, and it is a big problem. There it is, yep. But I have a bigger problem, and I haven't figured that part out just yet. I'm looking at the flare, and I'm at least happy with the way the flare came out, because it's nice and clean. Decide that I should at least take it and make sure it mates up fine, which I'm glad I did, because there's the other problem. That tool that I have is for air conditioning lines, and it is a 45-degree flare, and all the fuel lines should be flared to 37 degrees. So yeah, that tool will not make the flares I need. And right now I'm just going online and looking up the part number to verify that that's correct. And it is. So after this was done, I went online, ordered a few feet more of that fuel tubing, so I've got plenty more to work with to remake that line several more times if I need to. And I need to order a correct 37 degree flaring tool. Oh well. At least it was a cheap part. Well, the tube is, the tool's not. Live and learn. Verify your tools first, and when flaring, I'm sure I'll make the mistake again because it's happened before, but yeah, never forget to put that that nut and that collar on before you flare tubing. Anyhow, I hope you all enjoyed it. I'll try and get a little more work done tomorrow on Father's Day if I can, and then after that I'm gone for a couple more days, but hopefully that'll give all the parts and tools and stuff time to come in so I can hit the ground running again the end of next week. Anyways, thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed it. See you on the next one.